With the assassins dealt with, Hulagu could turn his focus to the main objective, Baghdad. Baghdad was the richest city in the world, standing as the bulwark of the sciences as Europe lay silent during the Dark Ages. Before the assault, the Mongols performed their usual course of action and sent an envoy to demand that the Caliph submit to Mongol rule and atone for not sending men to help in the putting down of the Ismailis. Just as those before him, the Caliph underestimated the Mongols and scoffed at the Mongol demands. He instead rose up and demanded that the Muslim world unite against these infidel invaders. He announced that Islam could not allow these foreign invaders to occupy the capital of the Muslim world. Hulagu remained unimpressed with the Caliph and set off for the capital, slowly but surely. Along the way, the Mongol vassals from across Europe and Asia marched on the Caliph to swarm him from all directions. As the Mongols advanced, the fleeing population flocked to the city, crowding the inner walls beyond their maximum capacity. Soon the Mongols and their allies had encircled the city and occupied the outer city surrounding the walls. Hulagu ordered his men to begin digging ramparts and ditches around the city for the siege. The Mongols couldn't build a wall of timber around the city like they did in Russia, but they could use the husks of the date palm trees as rockets for the assault on the city. The Mongols bombarded the city with all of the cutting-edge technology that they had cultivated from their conquests, as well as recent innovations brought on by the merging of cultures and technology that the Mongols had created. Smoke grenades, rockets of all sizes and designs, flaming debris from catapults, and all manner of projectiles rained on Baghdad for days. The Mongols then diverted the mighty Tigris River to flood the Caliph's army and take the city. Hulagu ordered the people of Baghdad to leave the city for easier looting. The Caliph was locked in a cell for 3 days, without food or water, and then Hulagu brought the man his immense collection of gold. Hulagu ordered the Caliph to eat the gold, and the Caliph cried that he could not. Hulagu then asked why he had so much gold in the first place. The Caliph and his male family were then killed, in the same way Mongols killed all people of high birth, without bloodshed. They were wrapped and trampled to death by Mongol horses. The Mongols moved to Damascus, with the further help of Christian crusaders stationed along the coast, and the help of the Seljuk Sultan from modern-day Turkey, forced the city to surrender with ease. When the Mongols pushed further west, however, they encountered the western limit of Mongol conquest, as an army of slaves bought by the Egyptians from the Italian Genoans, who themselves had bought from the Mongols in Russia, encountered and defeated their old masters. The Mongols had conquered more Muslim land than the Christians could have ever dreamed of, and done so in the period of 7 years. Baghdad would not be conquered by a non-Muslim army until 2003 at the hands of the Americans. However, things on the Chinese front had not fared as well. Kublai moved far too slowly and made far too many mistakes. The fat, gout-ridden old man only sent excuses back to Karakorum, while his brother Hulagu sent word of conquest. Mongol Khan was furious and sent the same men that had purged Ogedai's family to investigate Kublai's court. They found suspicion of fraud and fiscal irresponsibility and killed many of Kublai's court. Monk then ordered his brother to Karakorum to answer for his irresponsibility. Kublai threw himself on the floor and begged his elder brother for forgiveness. Monk accepted and decided on a new plan for the conquest of the Sung. Monk decided that he himself should lead the conquest of the Sung. Having trained under Subadai in Europe, he believed that he could overthrow the Sung. Monk ordered his youngest brother, Erik Bok, to rule Karakorum in his stead, and sent Kublai back to his territory in northern China to deal with a religious war occurring between the Buddhist and Taoist monks. Monk swept along the western border of the Sung, capturing the neighboring nations first, as his teacher Subadai would have. After easily capturing the smaller nations, the Mongols began to move on the Sung. But the foreign climate and disease proved too strange to deal with and slowed the Mongol advance. And then, seemingly from nowhere, Monk contracted one of these foreign diseases and died. The advancement of the Mongols suddenly stopped, as it had in Europe, as the Mongols scrambled to secure their lands that they had controlled. Rather than the past, where the Mongols returned to Mongolia to vote in a Kurultai, each faction stayed in its acquired territory, for fear that another would move on them in their leave. The Mongol Empire had become its largest under Mongol Khan, and at its largest, fractured into pieces, as the nomadic empires had done in the past. Monk was the last of the great Khans, and as he died, so too did the united Mongol nation. Kublai turned his attention away from the foreign Sung and towards his younger brother, Erik Bok, who held the Mongol heartland. The two brothers held Kurultais in each of their lands, and Kublai's lack of Mongol spirit made him alien to most of the family. The Golden Horde, as it came to be known, in Russia, supported Erik. Representatives from all branches of the family came to support Erik in his Kurultai in Mongolia. Kublai, however, also held a Kurultai, And unlike his brother's large support base, Kublai had none other than his own followers. To strengthen himself, Kublai simultaneously decreed himself the title of Zhongtong, to simplify his position not only as Mongol Khan, but also as Chinese Emperor. He had strong control of his Chinese army, as well as his own detachment of Mongols, and more importantly, controlled the farmland that fed Karakorum to the north. Without the flow of food, Karakorum could not function, and it was evacuated in order to not face starvation. Kublai then moved on his younger brother, and slowly took control of Mongolia and Karakorum. Erik eventually submitted to his brother, who demanded that he publicly state which side of the fight was the correct one. Erik bravely stated in true Mongol pride, "We were then, and you are today." Erik shortly after died, and Kublai never received the support from the other branches of the family to the west, and the Mongols remained separated. Kublai would go on to conquer the Sung, as well as parts of Southeast Asia, and submit the rest of Asia as vassal states. The Mongols bled into Chinese culture and founded the Yuan dynasty. The descendants of Hulagu would found the Ilkhanate in the Middle East, and eventually become the Mughals who would conquer India. The Golden Horde in Russia would create the Russian dynasties that would create the Russian identity that lasts to this day. The Mongol Empire started in the hands of a starving son of a widowed mother, stolen from her first husband and left to die alone in the wilderness on the fringes of human settlement, and ended in the largest empire the world has ever seen. Come back next week for the full series. Support the channel on Patreon and subscribe for weekly animated history videos.